A stranger texted me, "Do not go to the wedding." When I called back, what that person told me made me goosebumps, and I decided to take action. I set the table the way Josh would have liked it, slow and careful, as if he were watching from the doorway with that soft smile he used to save only for me. I laid out the hand-stitched wedding cloth I made at 23, the one with tiny blue threads shaped like waves because he was already a man of the sea back then. I placed 2 crystal glasses, engraved M and J, both still clear despite the years. A vase of white roses stood in the center, the petals trembling in the light draft. Our wedding photo rested against the vase, edges worn, but our smiles unchanged. Beside it, I set the card he wrote before his final voyage. "I'll return to you." I positioned his chair across from mine, adjusting it twice the way I always did, imagining him clearing his throat and saying, "Straighten it a little more, Meg." It was our 55th anniversary. I was celebrating it alone, yet not alone. I had just lit the small candle between us when I heard footsteps and the unmistakable sigh of impatience. Brianna stepped out first, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the table like it was a crime scene. "You've lost your mind, haven't you?" she said. "If you're going to waste time decorating, at least take these things to the cemetery so they match the dead." Owen followed, his voice heavier, colder. "A celebration with a man who's not coming back? You're doing this for pity, Mom. It's embarrassing." Lexi held her phone up instantly, already live streaming. "Guys, look," she said, angling her camera toward me. "My grandma is literally throwing a party for someone 6 feet under. I cannot make this up." Noah snorted. "If Grandma's bored, she should focus on my wedding instead. This ghost party is just weird." I kept my hands in my lap, fingers trembling only slightly. I had expected indifference, but not this venom. Then, Lexi reached into her handbag, pulled out a wrinkled wedding invitation with one corner bitten off and damp with dog saliva. She tossed it onto my plate. "This is for my wedding," she said. "Come if you want. It's just protocol. No one's counting on you," Brianna added. "And please, if you do show up, don't talk about how Josh disappeared at sea. It's humiliating. Teens don't need to hear tragic love stories." Owen nodded. "Don't make a scene. Just sit in the back, if you insist on coming." Their cruelty had layers, each one more absurd than the last, but all tied to the same bitter root. They hated that I declined to sign the refinancing papers for Brianna's ridiculous virtual resort project, a pyramid scheme wrapped in glossy language. They called me an obstacle the day I refused. They hated that I didn't let Lexi use Josh's wedding ring as a prop for her TikTok hair tutorial. She called me a stingy relic. They hated that I stepped in when Noah bullied the old man next door. He yelled at me, "Old people like you should just disappear." But the deepest resentment came from Owen. When our town held a community event last year, 3 different families hugged me and said, "Megan is the best thing about the Holts." I saw the anger in Owen's eyes then, the kind that grows quietly like mold. They despised me because the world still respected me in a way they never earned. They all returned inside without waiting for a word from me, leaving the table ruined, the candle flickering weakly. I stayed seated, hands resting near the invitation, with teeth marks still visible on the edge. Sometimes even paper suffers more dignity than an old woman. About 200 words into my thoughts, my phone buzzed sharply against the wooden table. A single message appeared. "Don't come to the wedding," I frowned. Another message lit up instantly. "If you show up, you won't come back home." My breath stilled for a moment, not out of fear, but recognition. I had seen enough darkness in people to know when a threat wasn't metaphorical. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. I pressed the call on the unknown number. After 2 rings, someone whispered, breathless, trembling, "Mrs. Holt? You don't know me. I shouldn't be saying this, but don't come to that wedding. Please." I steadied my voice. "Who is this? Why are you calling me?" The person swallowed hard. "I heard them in the hotel meeting room. Your family. They were talking about the glass bridge walkway during the reception. They said you'd be standing there. They said one push would be enough. They laughed. The line crackled. I shouldn't have heard it, but I did, and you need to stay home. The call ended abruptly. I stared at the table Josh and I once shared, now bruised by their cruelty. I touched his chair gently. Josh, I whispered. I think our family wants me gone. The candle flickered, casting his shadow on the empty chair. But I'm still here. And I won't be easy to erase. I did not sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table long after the candle on my ruined anniversary display had burned itself into a puddle of wax. The phone call replayed in my mind on a loop, each whisper tightening around my ribs. I had lived through storms before real ones, where roofs ripped off and children clung to my arms for dear life, and yet nothing chilled me like the idea that my own family might be planning my fall. I learned long ago that fear is a compass. It points somewhere for a reason. So, at dawn, I began to follow it. I moved quietly through the house, careful not to wake anyone. They always slept late, after a night of complaining about their own lives. Brianna's laptop was still open on the dining table, a half-finished smoothie melting beside it. I told myself I wasn't snooping, I was surviving. I clicked through her tabs. Vacation websites, luxury spas, sponsorship emails. Then something stopped me cold. An insurance portal. It required a login, but the email subject line right above it was visible. Policy confirmation, Megan Holt. I felt the air thin around me. I clicked it. $500,000. Beneficiaries: Owen and Brianna Holt. My throat burned. They had taken out a life insurance policy on me without my knowledge, the kind that pays out immediately in accidental death cases. I whispered Josh's name into the empty room. I think I know why they want me gone. His absence had never felt heavier. I left the email open exactly the way I found it. If they noticed, I wanted them to think nothing had changed. Then I checked Lexi's wedding website. She had posted photos of the venue, a lakefront hotel with a glass bridge suspended just above the water. The caption read, "Perfect spot for dramatic entrances." But the comments below told another story. "Be careful on that bridge, slippery when wet. My aunt broke her wrist there. Pretty, but dangerous if someone bumps you." I sat back slowly. They hadn't chosen that spot for beauty, they had chosen it for opportunity. Later that morning, I brewed tea and pretended not to watch them eat breakfast. I waited for slip-ups, not confessions, just carelessness. Evil rarely announces itself, it seeps out between sentences. Noah started it. He was buttering a bagel when he said, "The wedding is going to be such a relief. Some people are finally going to stop hanging around." Brianna laughed, like she understood the punchline. Owen didn't look up from his phone. "Mom, you should come," he said. "Don't make us deal with awkward questions about your absence." His tone was sharp, rehearsed. "People talk." I held his gaze. "What questions?" He smirked. "The kind we don't want to answer. Just be there and do your part." I felt the thin veneer of civility stretching between us like brittle glass, but it was the smallest voice that cut deepest. Lexi, walking past me, muttered under her breath, "Hope she doesn't slip before the big moment." She said it like a joke, but her eyes were flat, empty. I had seen that look once before, on a boy who pushed another child into floodwater during the storm of '83. That child nearly died. People forget that the most dangerous monsters are not the loudest, they are the ones who look right through you. As their laughter faded, my mind pulled me somewhere else, somewhere saltier, safer. The last day I saw Josh alive, he stood at the harbor, adjusting his gear while the wind tangled his hair. He kissed my forehead and said, "Meg, if the day comes when the people around you stop looking like family and start looking like wolves, remember what I taught you." I had asked him what he meant. He squeezed my hands. "The sea never lies, never betray. But blood sometimes does." I didn't understand back then. I understand now. The warning echoed like a wave returning to shore. By late afternoon, I had replayed the mysterious call so many times in my mind that I could hear the tremble of the caller's voice even in silence. I needed the truth. I needed more than a whisper, so I called the number again. This time it rang twice and disconnected. A third time voicemail. I left a message. If you're trying to save my life, I need to know who you are. I didn't expect a reply. But around 6 in the evening, while Owen and Brianna argued loudly about wedding costs in the living room, my phone buzzed in my apron pocket. A text. I shouldn't have said anything, but they were talking in the hotel staff area. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. "Who were you?" I typed back. The answer came in fragments. "I clean tables there. I heard them. They didn't see me. I'm just an employee." Another buzz. "They said the bridge is slippery on purpose for photos, but they also said it wouldn't take much if someone wanted an accident." Then one final message. "I heard your name." I stood perfectly still, tea towel clenched in my hand. The voices from the living room faded. The clatter of dishes faded. All that remained was a hollow ringing inside me, echoing Josh's last warning. Wolves wearing the faces of family. I looked at the chewed wedding invitation on the counter. They had given it to me like trash. But now I understood something they didn't. The invitation wasn't for a wedding. It was an execution date. And I was done pretending not to notice. The morning of the wedding felt wrong from the moment I opened my eyes. There was no wind outside, no birds calling from the maple tree, just a strange stillness, the kind that makes a person hesitate before stepping out of bed. I dressed carefully, choosing the navy dress Josh once said made me look like a woman who knows her own mind. I needed his strength wrapped around me today, even if it was only in thread and memory. When I arrived at the hotel, the lobby was buzzing, flowers everywhere, champagne flutes tinkling, bridesmaids squealing about hair and makeup. But the moment I stepped through the doors, the air changed. Conversations dropped a register. A few eyes slid away from me. Owen pretended not to notice I had arrived at all. Brianna approached first, wearing a smile so tight it could crack. "Mother, you made it," she said, lightly touching my arm like she was handling a fragile vase. "Be careful when you walk later, all right? The glass bridge gets slippery. We would not want any accidents." She said the word like it tasted sweet in her mouth. Lexi swept in next, glitter on her eyelids and a phone glued to her hand. "Grandma, stay out of the photo zones unless someone invites you. We have a curated aesthetic today." Then she turned her camera toward herself and whispered, "Crisis prevention step 1. Keep ghosts out of frame." The girls around her laughed, the careless kind of laughter that forgets who raised the hands they were using to point at me. I stayed quiet. Stillness is often mistaken for weakness. Today I needed them to believe that. Harper found me first. A small figure in a pressed uniform, eyes darting like he feared every shadow. He approached me near the refreshments table where no one was paying attention. "Mrs. Holt," he whispered. "We spoke on the phone." His hands were trembling. He pulled a folded blueprint from inside his apron. A map of the wedding layout, each section labeled for staff. He pointed to the glass bridge extending across the lake. "This spot here," he said, pressing his finger on a red-marked corner, "is the only camera blind zone. They asked about it during planning. I thought they were concerned about privacy, but then I overheard something else." He glanced around, then tapped his phone. A recording played, Brianna's voice sharp and clear. "She just needs to stand in the right place. One slip, it ends." My stomach twisted, but my face stayed still. I thanked him softly. He shook his head. "I could not live with it if something happened to you." I folded the blueprint and tucked it into my small handbag. I did not shake. Not yet. Shock has a way of turning into steel if you let it. I returned to the main hall as if nothing had happened. I smiled when necessary. I congratulated Lexi's friends. I sat where the ushers told me to sit. I existed exactly the way they expected: quiet, small, predictable. It was the safest disguise I had. But the danger revealed itself quickly. Owen approached during the cocktail hour. "Mom, come with me," he said, guiding me with a hand that looked gentle but felt firm. "Lexi wants a family photo on the bridge." I stopped. "Here is fine," I said. His jaw tightened. "The photographer is already waiting. Just walk." His fingers pressed into my shoulder harder than necessary. I slipped away under the pretense of smoothing my skirt, and he sighed through his teeth, the way he used to when I refused to sign something. Lexi tried next. She arranged a group of bridesmaids near the lake and called out, "Grandma, could you stand back a little?" "No, farther. Keep going, farther still." The place she pointed to was exactly the corner Harper had marked. One of her friends whispered, "Is that the spot?" And Lexi elbowed her sharply. "Shut up," she hissed. I pretended not to hear. Instead, I took a seat on a bench near the water where I could watch everything without giving them what they wanted. My heart was steady, strangely so, like it had decided to protect me before my mind could catch up. I observed every movement, the way Owen hovered near the bridge railings, glancing at me whenever someone walked past, the way Brianna kept checking her phone and then scanning the crowd, the way Lexi paced like she was waiting for a cue. They were restless, anticipating, as if the ceremony was not their highlight, my fall was. The officiant called guests to be seated. I rose slowly. Owen appeared again. "This way, Mom," he said, gesturing toward the bridge. "There is a shortcut." His lie was soft but too rehearsed. I turned my head toward him and smiled. "I prefer the long way." For the first time that day, his composure cracked. And in that tiny crack, I saw it, the fear that I was no longer walking exactly where they expected. The fear that their plan was slipping, and so was their control. I spent the rest of the ceremony pretending to be nothing more than an elderly woman trying not to get in the way. I smiled at strangers, nodded politely at distant relatives, and kept my hands folded like I was afraid of touching anything that did not belong to me. Underneath all that softness, something hard was forming. I felt it taking shape like a bone mending after being broken too many times. That night, after I returned home, Harper sent me a message asking to meet near the service exit of the hotel. I agreed, walking there wrapped in Josh's old coat as though his steadiness could shield me. Harper was waiting with someone else, a young woman with sharp eyes and a briefcase clutched against her chest. "Mrs. Holt," she said, stepping forward. "You may not remember me." But I did. It hit me like a quiet flash. Camille Ross. The little girl with scraped knees I carried through the floodwaters during the storm of '03. The girl who clung to me, shivering, while Josh tied broken branches into makeshift steps so we could climb onto the porch roof. She was older now, stronger. A lawyer who carried herself like someone who had learned the usefulness of fear only when directed at the right people. "I heard what they planned," she said. "Harper told me. And I owe you my life. So whatever you need, I'm here." I nodded once. No dramatic gratitude, no trembling. Just a silent agreement between three people who knew danger when they saw it. We found an empty staff lounge. Camille spread folders across the table, insurance documents, property records, security protocols. Harper added the printed blueprint. I placed my handbag beside them, feeling the shift from victim to strategist settle into my bones. "This is enough to raise suspicion," Camille said, tapping the insurance papers. "But not enough for prosecution. Not yet." She leaned closer. "We need them admitting intent. One sentence, even half. Anything that ties their words to that exact spot on the bridge." I reached into my coat pocket and took out a small hair clip, silver, shaped like a ribbon. "Then we will make them speak," I said. Harper looked confused. Camille smiled slowly. Inside the clip was a recorder Josh once used when documenting ship logs for a community museum project. He always said machines would lie only when a man taught them to. People, on the other hand, lied just because they liked hearing themselves talk. I placed the clip on the table. "This will do," Camille whispered. The next part of the plan came easily, too easily, which told me something about how predictable cruelty can be. Harper would quietly guide me through staff paths during the reception tomorrow. Camille would stay hidden near the service corridor with her work phone recording a backup line. My job was simple: let my family talk. They always did. They never imagined I could hear them unless they wanted to be heard. As we finalized the plan, a memory surfaced: Josh, leaning over the side of his boat, reaching for a sailor who had slipped during a storm. The man fought the water, kicking wildly, but the waves tried to swallow him. Josh grabbed him by the collar and hauled him back on deck. Later, soaked and exhausted, he looked at me and said, "Truth works the same way. People try to drown it, but it floats. Always." The memory steadied me like an anchor. The next afternoon, I arrived at the hotel early. Harper fetched me through a side entrance and pinned the hair clip just above my left ear. "It will catch everything," he whispered. His nervousness made him clumsy, so I adjusted it myself. "Calm down," I told him. "Fear is only useful when it keeps you awake, not when it makes you shake." We walked together through narrow corridors behind the ballroom. The sounds of the reception filtered through the walls: music, laughter, glass clinking, the hollow joy of people celebrating a future built on borrowed pieces of someone else's past. I waited near the service pantry while Harper checked the main hall. He returned moments later. "They're looking for you," he said. "All three of them." "Good. Let them look." I stepped into the staff corridor that led directly toward the glass bridge outside. Just as we predicted, Brianna's voice drifted out of a storage room. "Where is she? Owen, you were supposed to keep her close." He muttered something I could not hear. Then Lexi snapped. "It's one moment, one tiny moment. She slips, everyone screams, and then we cry. Why is this so hard?" The door cracked open as Owen responded. "Because she's paranoid. Old people know when they're unwanted." His laughter hit me like cold air. Every word fed the recorder. Every syllable tied a noose of their own making. I stepped deliberately closer, rattling a tray to make them think I was approaching accidentally. Silence dropped inside the room. Then Brianna whispered, "Fine. When she walks across tonight, just stay behind her." A bump. Nothing more. The clip captured it all. I turned away before they could see me. My heart did not pound. My hands did not shake. Instead, a calmness settled over me, sharp and focused. They believed they had orchestrated the night, but I had already rewritten the ending. The glass bridge shimmered under the afternoon lights, clear enough that you could see the water ripple beneath it. People called it beautiful. To me, it looked like a stage built for a single purpose. Owen approached me with a smile stretched too thin, the kind of smile someone wears when they are trying to hide their excitement behind politeness. "Mom," he said, looping his arm around mine. "Come stand at the edge. You'll get a perfect picture with the lake under you." His hand tightened, guiding me toward the spot Harper had circled in red on the blueprint. The one with the camera blind zone. The one they chose for my final moment. Brianna lurked only a few steps away, her expression soft enough to fool anyone who had not lived with her long enough to recognize the cruelty beneath it. She gave Lexi a small grin, the kind that signaled a shared secret. "Ready," she mouthed. Lexi nodded. She moved behind me with exaggerated sweetness, her phone raised like she was about to take a picture. "Hold still, Grandma," she cooed. "Let me fix your hair so you look less messy." Her hand hovered near my shoulder, too close, too deliberate. They had rehearsed this. They believed I would be confused, slow, easy to tip like an old figurine gathering dust on a shelf. What they did not know was that I felt everything around me as sharply as cold water on bare skin. Harper stood exactly where he needed to be, pretending to adjust a floral arrangement while his phone captured every angle. Camille was farther back, stationed by a decorative arch, her camera trained directly on Lexi's hand. The hair clip on my head hummed with a tiny red pulse, silently recording each breath they took behind me. Owen nudged my elbow. "Step a little more to the right, Mom. Just one more inch." His voice trembled ever so slightly. Excitement again. Maybe even relief. I wondered briefly whether he had convinced himself this was mercy, a painless slip into the water that would spare him the shame of a mother who refused to disappear quietly. Then the chaos began, not from them, but from their own carelessness. Lexi's heel caught on a decorative lantern cord someone had left too close to the walkway. She pitched forward with a gasp, arms flailing. Her phone flew from her hand, clattering across the glass. She toppled hard, her knees slamming the surface with a hollow crack that vibrated under my feet. A murmur rose from the guests. Brianna's face blanched with panic. "Lexi," she hissed. But instead of checking on her daughter, she lunged for me. "Let me help you step back, Megan. You're going to slip." Her hands shot forward, not to steady me but to push me further toward the edge. But age had not made me fragile. It had made me patient. I stepped aside with the smallest pivot, letting her momentum carry her forward. She stumbled, her knee striking the glass with a sickening thud. A faint crack spidered beneath the surface. Gasps erupted from the crowd, a ripple of shock and confusion. Someone shouted for security. I stayed perfectly still, hands clasped in front of me, as if I were merely an observer of my own attempted murder. Harper activated the small speaker, hidden inside his suit pocket. At first the sound blended into the murmur of the guests, then it sharpened, rising above the noise like a blade slipping free of its sheath. Brianna's voice filled the air. Just get her to stand in the right spot. One slip, one fall. It ends tonight. People stopped moving. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned, eyes widened, necks craned toward us. Then came Lexi's voice from the same recording. This is perfect. No cameras, just a push. Grandma won't feel a thing. The crowd fell silent in a way that felt cavernous. Brianna scrambled to her feet, shaking her head so violently her earrings swung. This is fake. Someone edited this. But her voice cracked beneath its own weight. Owen backed away as if distance could erase the truth, stuck to his name. Lexi sat frozen on the glass, mouth open in horror, realizing the phone she lost earlier had recorded the fall and likely more. A group of guests whispered urgently. A woman clutched her pearls. A man muttered, "My God." They were trying to kill her. Camille stepped forward, raising her phone deliberately. Everything is recorded. Everything. Her tone was steady, cutting through the confusion. You pushed an elderly woman toward a known hazard, coordinated it, and discussed it openly. There are witnesses. Brianna's facade shattered. You old witch, she spat at me. You think you can ruin us? Her voice was shrill, hysterical, frantic. Owen grabbed her arm, hissing, "Be quiet." Lexi hid her face. I looked at them the way Josh once looked at storms approaching from the horizon without fear, just recognition. You were ready to throw me into the water, I said softly. So perhaps you can understand why the truth is ready to swallow you now. The guests stepped back from them, like they were contagious. The bridge beneath us shimmered. The world watched. The trap they set had become the spectacle they could not escape. The music had stopped, but the silence afterward was louder than any orchestra. People stood scattered across the reception hall like overturned dominoes, shaken, confused, unsure where to look. Brianna was clutching her knee, Owen was sweating through his suit jacket, and Lexi sat frozen with her mascara melting down her cheeks. They thought the worst was over, that embarrassment was the only consequence heading their way. They were wrong. I walked toward the stage at a steady pace, my steps echoing through the hall. The same stage Lexi had insisted was for family speeches only. I never imagined I would be the one delivering the final speech of the night. I climbed the steps without assistance and reached for the microphone. It felt light in my hand, as if it had been waiting for me. Since everyone seems confused, I said, my voice calm but resonant. Let us clear the air. A few guests whispered. Someone started recording. Another shushed them. I clicked a small button on the side of my hair clip. The audio that Harper and Camille had helped me capture began to play through the speakers with brutal clarity. Owen's voice, unmistakable, filled the hall. Once she is gone, the debt dies with her. The house becomes ours. It is simple math. The old woman dies, the family lives. A gasp moved through the crowd like wind through dry leaves. Owen lunged forward. Stop this! That recording is doctored, someone tampered with it, but his voice cracked and his argument dissolved before it even formed. I ignored him. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded document. This, I said, holding it high enough for the front rows to see, is a life insurance policy, recently taken out, $500,000, signed without my knowledge and submitted as if I were already a corpse. Lexi covered her face. Brianna stared at the ceiling like she was praying the lights would collapse before the truth could settle. I unfolded the papers carefully, not rushing. The beneficiary is not my church, not a charity, not even a trust for their children, I continued, my voice unwavering. It is Brianna Holt, the same woman who just tried to shove me toward a glass bridge. Murmurs erupted. Someone cursed under their breath. Another whispered, "That is attempted murder." Guests crowded around the stage, Phones raised. They smelled drama, scandal, justice, whatever this was becoming. They wanted to witness every drop. I turned toward Harper near the back of the room. He nodded and tapped his phone screen. A projection flickered to life on the wall behind me. It showed Lexi just minutes earlier, her arm angling forward, her hand stretching toward my back, her balance shifting with calculated purpose, caught clearly from Harper's hidden footage. Then the moment she slipped. Then Brianna's desperate push that missed my shoulder by inches but sent her crashing toward the glass. The room exploded. Shouts overlapped, chairs scraped, someone yelled for security. Lexi tried to stand, but her legs wobbled, and she grabbed a tablecloth to steady herself. Brianna backed away from the stage, mumbling, "This is not true. This is not what it looks like." But no one believed her. Not anymore. Then the doors burst open. Detective Morales entered with 2 officers behind him. His badge flashed in the bright reception lights. His gaze swept the room before landing squarely on me. "Mrs. Megan Holt?" he called. "We are here under the request of attorney Camille Ross and in connection with the evidence you submitted earlier this week." Camille stepped out from the crowd, composed, confident, holding her legal folder like a queen carrying her scepter. "Detective," she said. "The suspects are right there." Owen stumbled backward. "Suspects? What suspects? This is a wedding." His voice cracked on the last word. Detective Morales did not blink. Owen Holt, Brianna Holt, Lexi Holt stepped forward. When they hesitated, he motioned to the officers. "Cuff them," Brianna shrieked. "You cannot arrest us at our daughter's wedding." Her voice climbed to a desperate pitch. An officer took her arm. "Ma'am, you can either walk or be escorted." Owen tried to reason, his tone swinging wildly between pleading and threatening. "You have no proof. You cannot." Then he stopped, because the screen behind me was still looping Lexi's attempt to push me, and the entire hall had heard his confession minutes earlier. Lexi screamed when the cold metal of the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "Grandma, please. This is not what you think. I did not mean—" I turned to her slowly. "You meant every word, and every step." She stopped struggling. Cameras flashed. Guests whispered to each other, some in disbelief, some in righteous disgust. One woman said loudly, "I hope they rot." Another added, "Imagine doing that to your own mother." The music equipment crackled as one of the speakers overloaded. Even the sound system was falling apart under the weight of their lies. Detective Morales approached me gently. "Mrs. Holt, we may need your formal statement at the station later, but for now, you are safe." Safe. A word I had not heard in years. As the 3 of them were escorted out, the wedding coordinator approached, panic draining the color from her face. "Should we continue the ceremony?" she asked timidly. I looked at the shattered expressions, the fallen flowers, the ruined decorations, the truth hanging in the air like smoke. "No," I said. "This wedding ended before it ever began." And with that, the day meant to celebrate love became the day my family could no longer hide what they truly were. Justice had arrived, and it was wearing handcuffs. Courtrooms are colder than hospitals, not because of the air conditioning, but because of what they hold. Truths stripped of excuses. When I stepped inside for the sentencing hearing, I felt none of the trembling I used to carry in my bones. That fear had been scraped out of me the moment my own son tried to erase me for a debt he created. Now there was only clarity. Camille sat on my left, Harper on my right, each one a quiet reminder that loyalty does not always come from blood. The judge entered, a tall woman with deep-set eyes that had clearly seen every kind of human darkness. She wasted no time. "This court has reviewed all evidence submitted in the case of Owen Holt, Brianna Holt, and Alexis Holt," she began. "The acts committed were premeditated, coordinated, and motivated by financial gain. Elder abuse is one of the most despicable and cowardly forms of violence. Today, accountability will be delivered." Owen stood first. He tried to straighten his suit jacket as if adjusting fabric could patch the holes in his dignity. The judge looked at him like she was examining a stain. "Owen Holt," she said, "you are convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and intentional endangerment of a vulnerable adult. You exploited your mother's age, assumed her silence, and attempted to turn her death into currency. For these crimes, you are sentenced to 15 years in state prison, with no eligibility for parole for the first 8. A ripple of murmurs spread through the gallery. Owen's jaw slackened. For a moment, I saw the little boy he once was, the one who cried over scraped knees and begged me not to let go of his hand on the first day of school. That boy vanished long ago. The man standing there now had tried to kill me. He looked at me then, quickly, as if expecting pity. He found none. Brianna stepped forward next. Her lawyer whispered frantic instructions she clearly ignored. She lifted her chin like someone who still believed charm could rewrite reality. The judge was unmoved. "Brianna Holt," she said, "your participation in this crime included planning, coordination, and a direct attempt to push the victim into a hazardous area. You showed calculated intent and physical aggression. You are sentenced to 10 years in state prison, along with mandatory psychological counseling." Brianna's mouth fell open. She mouthed the word 10, as if it were offensive to her ears. When the bailiff reached for her wrists, she recoiled, but there was nowhere left for her to run. Then came Lexi. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, stripped of filters, ring lights, and curated smiles. The judge regarded her differently, not with softness, but with the understanding reserved for youth that might still be salvageable. "Alexis Holt," she said, "you knowingly participated in the plot to harm your grandmother. While your age and lack of criminal history weigh in your favor, your actions were reckless and malicious. You are sentenced to 5 years of supervised probation, 2,000 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, and a 3-year ban from all social media platforms." The gasp Lexi let out was sharper than any scream. For her generation, silence was punishment. No followers, no comments, no validation. Her entire identity was built online, and the judge had just shut it off like a switch. Noah was the last matter addressed. He sat in the back, knees pulled together, shaking. He had not pushed me, but he had laughed when the others plotted. The judge spoke gently. "Given the circumstances and the environment in which he was raised, Noah Holt will be placed under the temporary guardianship of a court-appointed family until a long-term placement is determined." The boy looked at me, guilt bending his small shoulders. I gave him a nod, not forgiveness, not condemnation, just acknowledgement that he would have a chance to grow differently. When the sentences were done, Camille closed her folder. "It is over," she whispered. But something in me knew it was not an ending. It was a clearing. After the hearing, I returned to the house I had lived in for decades. The rooms were clean, but the memories were stained. Each corner held echoes of moments that had been twisted by betrayal. Every wall had absorbed words that should never have been spoken. I stood in the kitchen, where I once taught Owen to stir batter without spilling. I ran my hand over the banister where Lexi used to slide down laughing. Then I turned off the lights. I listed the house for sale the next morning. When the money arrived, I did not put it into savings. I founded Harbor Hands, a fund for abandoned seniors, those discarded by their families like broken furniture. We help them find housing, legal support, and safety. Some of them have stories worse than mine. Some just need someone to sit with them during meals. Camille offered her services as the foundation's legal advisor. Harper joined as operations manager. The two of them became the team I always deserved. People from town donated. Volunteers signed up. Elderly neighbors who once waved at me from afar now hugged me with both arms. One woman said, "You turned a nightmare into a lighthouse." Maybe I had, or maybe I finally stepped out of the place where they buried me and chose to rise on my own terms. As I signed the final papers for the sale of the house, I felt something lift from my shoulders. Not relief, rebirth. Justice had been served on the same platter they once planned to serve my absence. I was not gone. I was not erased. I was the beginning of something they could never kill. The ocean was quieter than I remembered, as if it, too, had grown older with me. The waves rolled in slow breaths, brushing the shore with the same rhythm Josh used when he slept beside me all those years ago. I walked along the wooden pier where he had boarded his final voyage, the planks creaking beneath my steps. I wore the same silver ring he had slipped onto my finger 55 years earlier. The world has changed countless times since then. The ring has not. I stopped at the very end of the pier, resting my hands on the rails, and let the wind wrap around me. "Josh," I whispered, "you told me once that if the day came when wolves wore our family's faces, I had to stand my ground and protect the only life I truly had." The water below shimmered. "Well," I breathed, "I did. I survived, not just for survival's sake, but because you taught me that endurance is a kind of love." For a long moment, I simply let myself feel the pier beneath me, the hum of the sea, the whisper of old memories surfacing and sinking like gentle tides. Then I turned away from the water. Life did not wait on nostalgia. Eventually, the memories settled the way waves do, calm, steady, no longer pulling me under, and I had things to do. I walked into the harbor office, small, sun-faded, always smelling faintly of rope and old coffee, and asked the manager, a man named Rusty Taylor, if they needed part-time help. Rusty blinked at me like he had just watched a ghost walk in holding a resume. "Megan Holt? The one who used to bake pies for the Coast Guard boys?" I nodded. That would be me. A grin spread across his face, warm and honest. "We'd be lucky to have you." He handed me a faded blue apron with the harbor's emblem sewn on crookedly. "Start whenever you want." I chose to start the next morning. My tasks were simple: wiping down benches, helping tie off small fishing boats, sweeping stray bits of rope and sand off the dock. I did each task with a kind of quiet joy. These were duties no one could twist or weaponize. No one asked me to disappear. No one mocked me for being slow. No one called me crazy for remembering love. Children from the nearby summer camp often wandered to the dock in little clusters. One afternoon, a girl with missing front teeth tugged at my sleeve. "Miss Megan, can you tell us a sea story?" So I told them about storms Josh had braved, about phosphorescent waves glowing like spilled stars, about dolphins that followed his ship like loyal shadows. The children sat cross-legged on the planks, listening with wide eyes. "Did he ever get scared?" one boy asked. I smiled. Of course he did. Everyone gets scared. But he told me that fear is like the tide, you cannot stop it, but you do not have to drown in it. The boy nodded seriously, as if committing that to memory forever. When their counselor arrived to collect them, they waved at me with the wild enthusiasm only children keep in their bones. I waved back, the warmth in my chest spreading like sunlight. People I had known for decades, neighbors, fishermen, the widow who sold seashell bracelets, stopped by whenever they passed. "We heard what happened," some of them whispered. "We are glad you're safe." Others simply hugged me. No questions, no pity, just presence. It was more healing than any courtroom sentence could ever be. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the water gold, I finished wiping down a row of rental kayaks and sat on the pier's edge. The breeze shifted, carrying a surge of salt stronger than usual. It wrapped around me, not chilling, but warm, familiar, like arms that had held me decades before. I closed my eyes. "Josh," I murmured, "I kept your ring, but I finally kept myself, too." The wind lifted my hair, brushed my cheek. For a heartbeat, it felt like a kiss. I touched the ring gently. "I'm still here," I whispered, "but I'm no longer living in grief. I'm living because I choose to, because surviving wasn't the end of the story." The horizon glowed faintly, the last light of day stretching across the waves like an open road. "This time," I said softly, "I'm living for me." I stood, brushing dust off my jeans, and took one last look at the water before heading home. The wind followed behind me, as if it were making sure I never walked alone. If you're still here, listening to the last breath of this story, thank you. Stories like mine aren't just about pain. They're about what a woman can rise from when everyone else expects her to fall. They're about the strength we carry long after the world decides we're too old to matter. And they're reminders that truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. It just needs someone willing to listen. If this story touched you, if it made you feel something, if it reminded you of someone in your own family or of the strength you forgot you had, then stay a little longer with me. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories so these memories, these lessons, these quiet victories won't fade into the dark. Each time you join me for another story, you help keep the voices of women like me alive, Women who lived, endured, remembered, and finally spoke. Thank you, sweetheart. I'll be here for the next story.